Good day, everyone. For teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. After 4 months of searching for answers regarding the whereabouts of their loved ones, family members of the 43 abducted students from Ayotzinapa, Mexico, are taking their case to the United Nations. Relatives of the missing students are in Geneva to testify in front of the UN Committee on Forced Disappearances. Citing a lack of new leads in the case, the Mexican government has declared the students to be dead. But relatives have rejected the claims and continue to demand that the students be returned alive. Meanwhile, in Mexico, as the government attempts to bury the case of the Ayotzinapa students, it is also cutting back on public spending. We go to our correspondent Clayton Kahn.
It was on Friday that Mexico's Finance Minister Luis Videgaray announced that the administration was to cut dramatically public funding due to the recent free fall in oil prices. The minister said the country was to cut approximately $9 billion in public funding, which equates to about 0.7% of the gross domestic product. According to the authorities, the cuts will primarily strike at the country's two state-owned energy companies, Pemex, the oil company, and the Federal Electricity Commission, which provides the country's consumers with electricity. Now, about 1/3 of Mexico's budget comes from its oil sector, and in recent weeks, the prices of oil have gone from roughly $80 a barrel to about $40 a barrel. Videgaray also announced that the major transportation plans, such as a high-speed rail that was planned to link Mexico City and the central major city of Querétaro, as well as a train service for the south of the country, have been canceled. The minister also affirmed that social programs will not be directly affected by the biggest budget cuts in a decade. However, many economists and experts say the effects will trickle down to the population as a whole. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for teleSUR here in Mexico City.
Thanks to Clayton. Peace talks between the Colombian government and FARC rebels resume in Havana, Cuba. The new round of negotiations will focus on reparations for victims of the more than 50-year conflict. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos says that he believes that this stage of the dialogue will be the most difficult in the now 2-year-old peace process. With more, here's our correspondent Natalia Margarita.
Peace talks between the Colombian government and this country's largest guerrilla group, the FARC, has resumed after almost 2 months of recess. During this 32nd round of negotiations in Havana, Cuba, both parties are scheduled to discuss on the issues of victims, justice, and the end of the armed conflict. Within this context, the political and military de-escalation of the conflict in order to finally reach a bilateral and definitive ceasefire will be at the center of this round of negotiations. Since December last year, the FARC have been successfully implementing a unilateral ceasefire, and President Juan Manuel Santos has already announced that the discussion over a bilateral ceasefire is a priority. Expectations are running high in Colombia, as the 3 points to be addressed in Havana are directly related to bring to an end more than 50 years of armed conflict in this Latin American country. From Bogotá, Natalia Margarita, teleSUR.
And thanks to Natalia. To Argentina now. Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez has arrived in Beijing for an official visit to the Asian nation. Now, Fernandez is scheduled to meet with Chinese government officials in efforts to follow up on bilateral agreements signed between the two nations. The Argentinian president will be in China until Thursday and will meet with her counterpart Xi Jinping on Wednesday. Taking a look now at some of the joint projects underway between Argentina and China. A nuclear power plant is currently being constructed on the outskirts of the capital of Buenos Aires, while the two countries have also agreed to jointly construct 2 hydroelectric dams that will provide nearly 5% of the South American country's energy needs. President Fernandez will reach out to Chinese state-owned mining companies that have expressed interest in investing in gold mining projects. Both countries are expected to review plans for the construction of a space station, as well as discuss a $11 billion currency swap agreement they signed last year. Venezuelan authorities have arrested the owners of a pharmacy chain for artificially causing customers to line up for some goods at some of its stores. President Nicolas Maduro announced the arrest as the Venezuelan government steps up its efforts to combat speculation and hoarding in the country. Now, according to Maduro, the pharmacy chain was withholding products in order to increase the impression of shortages in medicines and other medical supplies. And as the government takes action against economic sabotage, the private-owned company Llano Verde is now boosting its production. It's aimed at supplying a broader share of the national market. The company, which started storing rice, is now processing it and plans to expand to processing grains and flour. Its owners call it a patriotic duty to supply the market amid efforts to destabilize the economy. Let's take a look at some other top stories around the world. An Egyptian court has confirmed the death sentences against 183 supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. They were accused of involvement in the killing of 16 police officers during protests in 2013. However, some human rights groups say it is an attempt by the Egyptian government to destroy any opposition. Rebel forces are stepping up their efforts to push back the Ukrainian army in the east of the country. They're calling for a popular mobilization to boost their fighting strength to 100,000 in the coming weeks. The United States says it's considering providing weapons to government forces to fight the rebels. Kiev is facing internal opposition in its battle against rebel forces. The voluntary Eider Battalion, a group mainly made up of neo-Nazi and nationalist militants, has surrounded the defense ministry to oppose a government announcement that the battalion would be disbanded. The new Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, has met the British finance minister, George Osborne, in London ahead of talks with the European Union on restructuring Greece's debt. Germany has again said it opposes writing off of any of Athens' obligations. The former head of the International Monetary Fund, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, will make an appearance in court yet again. This time, Strauss-Kahn is being charged with heading an international prostitution ring while he headed the IMF. Strauss-Kahn could face up to 10 years in jail and a €10 million fine. Israel has violated the ceasefire with Gaza by once again opening fire on fishers from the coastal enclave. Our correspondent Noor Harazin has this report.
This morning in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli naval forces violated the agreed Palestinian-Israeli truce for the second day in a row, as the Palestinian Fishermen Committee reported that the Israeli naval forces shot at Palestinian fishermen off the coast of Gaza City. There was no injuries reported. However, the committee said that several boats were damaged. At the same time, in Gaza, the UNDP's special representative Frody Moing visited the Gaza Strip, and he also held a press conference talking about the process of the rebuilding of Gaza. He said that the UN are sorry about feeling short in rebuilding the Gaza Strip. However, they will continue removing the rubble and the ruins from the streets in order to set the districts and the affected areas ready for any future reconstruction.
North Sea oil and gas has made the Scottish...
If only for a short period of time, world oil prices are on the up. The West Texas Intermediate Index went briefly over $50 per barrel on Monday. Brent crude has also stabilized, closing at $53. Now, despite the increase, investors are warning that the rise in prices could only be momentary due to a considerable oversupply.
Industries provide over half the jobs.
U.S. President Barack Obama is sending a 10-year budget to Congress Monday, which would increase the federal debt by $6 trillion. Republican lawmakers have reacted skeptically, saying they will prioritize balancing the debt. Our correspondent Alexander Hall has more from Washington.
United States, accompanied by Ms. Ilana Simon.
President Obama submits his 2016 budget proposal to Congress on Monday. While the proposal hasn't been released, we do know that it specifies about $4 trillion in overall spending. That includes what the administration is calling middle-class economics for the 21st century, and includes funding for education, infrastructure, and other public works projects that we heard about in the State of the Union address. It's important to note that the proposal also also includes over $500 billion in proposed military spending, including an additional $51 billion for the war in Afghanistan and other counterterrorism projects, and that surpasses previous caps on spending set by Congress. We'll hear from President Obama himself when he delivers his remarks on the budget proposal this afternoon at the Department of Homeland Security, and we'll have that information as it becomes available. In Washington, I'm Alexandra Hall for teleSUR.
And thanks to Alexandra. In sports, the New England Patriots defeat the Seattle Seahawks during Sunday night's Super Bowl in the U.S. to be crowned the National Football League champions. In a close contest, the game came down to the final play when New England intercepted a questionable pass from the Seattle offense. Now, in the equally important commercial breaks, the fun part, Ecuador became the first foreign nation to advertise during the Super Bowl with a 30-second spot promoting the country as a tourist destination. The Ecuadorian Tourism Ministry estimates that the investment will be more than offset by the capital brought in by U.S. tourists. In cultural news, Colombian artist Fernando Botero inaugurated a new collection entitled Circus. His latest exhibit opened over the weekend in the Medellin subway station. The collection is inspired from Botero's experience during the 1930s in a Mexican circus. The 81-year-old artist chose the station for the exhibit to honor his native town of Medellin. More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For teleSUR English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Monday.